What breaks a fast? There's been so much conflicting information out there, so people are confused and asking, what do I do? So today we're going to talk about what breaks a fast. Coming right up. So the quick answer to that question, what breaks a fast, is really, really simple. Okay? Fasting is when you don't eat, so if you put something in your mouth and swallow, you're breaking the fast. That's the simplest, strictest explanation. So what we really want to ask ourselves is, why are we fasting? And for most people who watch this or are doing intermittent fasting or are concerned with what breaks a fast, I think what they're really asking, what can I eat, what can I drink, and not compromise the benefits of the intermittent fast. Okay? So we could do a spiritual or religious fast. And some of those, they say don't eat or drink anything. And then that's kind of their letter of the law. They just dictated that's the way it is. Don't eat or drink anything. So some spiritual religious fasts might allow nothing, or they might allow water. Some people might fast for gut health. If you have a leaky gut, if you have a really upset stomach that just reacts and blows up and explodes no matter what you put in there, fasting is a great way to allow your gut some time to heal. And then you're not really concerned with anything other than giving the gut some nutrients that help heal it, and don't put anything in that irritates it. So bone broth would be excellent, water would be totally okay, herbal teas and so forth, totally all right. So we're going to leave those behind, and we're going to talk about what I believe most people ask that question for, because they're doing intermittent fasting. Most of those people are trying to lose weight and or reverse diabetes and insulin resistance. So we're going to assume that that's the goal, to reduce insulin resistance. So I'm going to put these in 4 different categories, and we'll talk about this. So if you're trying to reverse insulin resistance, then everything is okay. You're still technically fasting for insulin resistance purposes if you don't put anything in that triggers insulin. If there is no insulin response, if there are no nutrients in there, things like coffee and tea, then they're totally fine. Black coffee, black tea, green tea, herbal teas that aren't sweet, they're totally fine. They're not going to have any influence on your insulin. So from an insulin resistance perspective, you're still fasting because you're not changing that trend. Things that are not okay, things that will affect insulin and break your fast, are things like sugar, juice, honey, and agave. Okay, no matter what the amount, they're really going to mess you up. And even though honey and agave don't have much of an insulin response, they're very, very low glycemic index because they're mostly fructose. Fructose is the main reason that people are insulin resistant in the first place, because fructose can only be metabolized through the liver. So the fructose kind of jam packs that liver full of sugar, and it develops fatty liver and insulin resistance. So the honey and agave is full of fructose, which is at the core of the mechanism that develops insulin resistance. All kinds of sugars and juices, fruits, stay away from them. So then I want to introduce something that a lot of people would say is breaking the fast, but if we stick to the letter of the law, yes, they break the fast because they might have a little bit of insulin response. However, I call them 1%ers because they have such a slight insulin response that it is insignificant for the purposes of reversing insulin resistance. So when you don't eat, your insulin is going to go down. The longer you don't eat, the more your insulin is going to go down. So if it helps you not eat for a very long time, if it helps having a few things to sort of get you through the day, then that is still going to assist you. It's still going to help you with that intermittent fast. And whenever you have something that has what I call the 1% response, your insulin is going to drop, and then you have that 1% response. So you get a little blip, but there's so little substance, there's such a small response that your insulin just keeps on dropping. So for the purposes of reversing insulin resistance, it still keeps going. So these things are not really going to hurt you in small amounts. Okay? So good fats. Those are things like MCT oil, coconut oil, and butter. Okay? They do have some calories. Technically, there'll be a tiny little insulin response, but not so much that it really matters. What's more important is that you can sustain that fast, if that helps you. Herb teas are fine as long as they're not sweet. If they're made with fruit and they taste a lot of sweet, they probably have a little bit of sugar in them, and then they would be in the no category. Lemon water. Now, lemon does have a tiny, tiny little bit of sugar, but it's so minuscule that if you put a teaspoon of lemon in some hot water, you're going to be fine. It's going to be a tiny, tiny little blip. Apple cider vinegar, totally fine. And cream in small amounts, I would also say, is fine. So a teaspoon, a tablespoon in some coffee or tea is going to create a tiny little blip, and then you'll get right back into getting more insulin sensitive again. Now, that doesn't mean you can drink a bottle of whipping cream because that's a meal. Okay, then that totally breaks the fast. But so all of these are quantity dependent. All right? Just like insulin responses are quantity dependent, these things also are quantity dependent. The only other thing to keep in mind is that if you're doing it for weight loss and you're fasting to burn off fat, then obviously you don't want to eat so much fat that the body doesn't need to burn the fat off the body. If you supply enough fat in the diet, it's going to burn that first, and it'll never get around to burning the fat on the body. So again, that's a quantity issue. Then I want to quickly address something that most people on keto don't talk about, and that's poison. Because there are certain things that may help you stay in ketosis or in fasting, but if they're poison, you're not getting healthier. And what's the point of losing weight if you're going to get sick? Okay, that's not why people do this. They try to lose the weight because they want to get healthy, and we want to get healthy first so that we can lose the weight. So things like aspartame, sucralose, margarine, and bad fats, they are poison. They interfere with the balance and health and function of your body. So just stay away from them. They're man-made, they're chemicals, they're made in a laboratory or a factory, chemical factory. So don't ever touch those. Doesn't matter if it helps you stay in ketosis or not. There are good fats and there are healthy non-calorie sweeteners, so stick with those. On that note, though, I want to mention something else. And that is when you eat something, or even when you don't eat something, and you have an insulin response. So how does that happen? Well, sweet taste. So it's not just what you eat, what you put into your mouth and swallow, it's what your brain perceives. There's a cephalic effect. So anytime you eat something, you taste something, your brain starts sending signals to your pancreas to make insulin long before that food ever hits the stomach. Just having it in your mouth. So you haven't ingested any nutrients, and yet your pancreas is producing insulin. Why is that? Because the body is so smart, it anticipates. So they have found that things that have a sweet taste, even though they have no nutrients, no calories, technically no blood sugar impact, stevia, erythritol, any sugar alcohol, xylitol, maltitol, etc., and some of the sweet herb teas, if you perceive a sweet taste, chances are you're making insulin in the pancreas. Okay? So it's very hard to quantify this because it's a subtle effect, but I would encourage people as much as possible, if you're doing keto, if you're doing intermittent fasting, try to get away from the sweet taste, because the sweets is sort of what got you in trouble in the first place. And if your body is wired to make insulin based on that, that can get you in trouble. So everyone is different, and because this is sort of a non-material effect, then it just depends on how you're wired. So the responses could vary widely. And I also said that you might actually have an insulin response from not eating something. Well, how would that work? Well, stress actually produces cortisol. Whenever you're stressed, your body senses that, hey, there's danger here. I need to mobilize resources so that I can deal with this danger. And now your adrenals release cortisol, and the cortisol raises blood sugar, and when blood sugar goes up, so does insulin. So cortisol can actually drive insulin resistance and has been proven to drive insulin resistance. So merely the fact of being stressed could actually break a fast, so to speak. So keep all these things in mind. Sometimes it's not just about following the letter, the tighter you follow the letter isn't necessarily the best thing. If something helps you stay in fasting state or almost fasting state longer, such as here, then it's a good thing. And you can consume a few hundred calories in a day of non-insulin triggering fats and still get the benefits. So don't look too closely on the technicality of it. Ask yourself why you're doing it and learn how insulin responses affect you. So the things that are off is anything that has significant calories, any sugar, any carbs, any protein, because they definitely will trigger a significant insulin response. But the 1%ers and the coffee and the tea are, in my opinion, going to be safe bets. Just don't overdo these, keep them in moderation, and you'll be all right. So please share this video. This channel, we try to make sense of things and explain them in a way that you can understand and apply them. And there's a lot of people out there looking for this information, so do them a favor and help them share this video. So if you have any questions, please leave them below. Let me know what your experiences are, and I'll do my very best to comment and answer your questions. Thanks for watching.